Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Michelle Veazey, the Executive Director of New Hampshire Businesses for Social Responsibility, and we're happy to welcome you to NHBSR's third webinar of the Bear in Mind series, a campaign that focuses on workplace mental well-being and offers resources to our members and friends who are interested in um, more inclusive workplaces. It is a time for a new approach to mental health. Employers benefit when they help employees to prioritize mental wellness, thereby nurturing an inclusive culture, reducing the stigma of mental health issues, and providing support through formal structures and programs. A psychologically safe culture at the workplace helps reduce worker turnover, absenteeism, decrease productivity, and workplace accidents. A healthy workforce or a healthy community to draw from cannot exist without addressing mental health. Mental health support is a true business imperative, not only for the outcomes, but to care for the people who are central to every organization. Today, we welcome speakers who will address this very issue and how they have experienced and addressed it. So first, I'd like to thank our sponsors for making this program possible and available to all. Our thanks to Kennebunk Savings, Coca-Cola Beverages Northeast, and Prime Buckles. We would also like to thank our program partners, Full Spectrum Wellness, the Richards Group, UNH's Brown Center for Innovative Learning, Dartmouth Health, and NAMI New Hampshire for sharing their expertise, which has allowed us to bring this important program to all of you. So now to start with, I am very pleased to welcome John Broderick to NHBSR's Bear in Mind program. John is the Senior Director of External Affairs at Dartmouth Health and formerly served as the Chief Justice of the New Hampshire Supreme Court. For the past 6.5 years, he has traveled throughout northern New England on a mission to change the culture and conversation around mental illness in an effort to destigmatize it. He says it's the most important work he has done in his entire professional life. And of course, knowing his professional life, that is quite a statement. Now it's my pleasure to kick off the webinar with remarks from John Broderick. Thanks for joining us, John.
Thanks, Michelle, very much. And it's a real pleasure to be here. This is an important topic you're tackling. And I also want to thank people who are taking time out of their day, maybe out of their lunch, to join us, and I appreciate that. For the last 6.5 years, with the help of Dartmouth Health, I have traveled in my black Jeep, actually 2 of them now, 100,000 miles all across New England. I've been on every back road there is. I've been on most interstate highways. But most importantly, I've been to 350 middle schools and high schools where I've been allowed to speak to over 100,000 young people. I've spoken maybe to another 40 or 50,000 adults in that time, and another 50,000 people remotely. And it's on the topic of mental health awareness. I'm a baby boomer, not that you ever could have guessed that. And in the world I'm from, no one ever talked about it. No one talked about it. And so everyone was fine. That wasn't true, but that's the world I'm from. And so I knew very little about it. And when it reared itself in my own family, I had 2 sons, 11 and 13, and my 13-year-old son was impacted by it. He thought it was just him, and my wife and I, both baby boomers, never saw it. And it took my family on a journey that I wouldn't wish on another living soul. But the good news is my family survived it, all of us, and came out the pipe and are in a much better place now. And my son has been very proud of the work I've been doing the last 6.5 years, which makes me proud to be doing it. But because I was ignorant, I'm sure I made my mental health journey for my son harder than it should have been. I see that now, and in many ways I failed him. But we are trying to do something positive with that experience. And I'm very glad I did. I had an opportunity to get involved in this campaign to let people know the 5 most common signs of mental illness. Seems pretty simple, but it's genius. I didn't create it. I wish I'd been that smart. but I knew genius when I saw it. And Barbara Van Dalen, who's a psychologist in Washington, D.C., said, I want people to know the 5 basic signs of mental illness like they know the signs for heart attack or stroke. And most of us know some or all of those signs, but we don't necessarily know the signs of a mental health problem. And even though we've advanced substantially in talking about mental health, we're a long way from where we need to be. And that won't change, by the way, until enough of us are willing to say in a very public and dignified way, my mother, my father, my cousin, my sister, my brother, myself, and then start to normalize it and demythologize it. If I have any value here today, it's that I have probably hugged more kids with wet eyes in New England than anyone living. Not because I'm special, just because I showed up. And in my presentation, I was very vulnerable. And when kids sense that, they return the favor. Young people are amazing. I love this generation of kids. Let me be very clear about that. They are smarter than I was. They're more worldly wise than I was, and they're a whole lot less judgmental than any prior generation. And when it comes to mental health, trust me when I tell you, they want to talk about it. And the reason they want to talk about it is not just because they're less judgmental, but their generation is dealing with mental health issues that a lot of prior generations didn't deal with or didn't deal with to the same extent. Not because they're weak, they're not, they're incredible kids, but every kid I've been hugging has no memory prior to 9/11. They have no memory of a world that didn't have a cell phone, didn't have a virtual reality. They're living in a 24/7 universe, and all of them are striving to be successful. They may be living their own dream of someone else's. I've just heard so many stories in so many schools. But I want to share some statistics with you because these young people are fiercely bright and capable, and they're coming in your direction. They're going to be filling up your workstations. They're going to be filling up the executive suites in time. And they're going to change the culture. And the business that doesn't realize the change that's coming, it's probably not going to do too well. To be very honest, this is not just a decent thing to do or a nice thing to do. It's an economic imperative to do it because these kids won't join you, they won't stay with you, and they won't. And so you have to have soft hands in dealing with this topic, and it's way overdue. Let me share some basic stats that I didn't know, but I know now. 1 in 5 adolescents in the United States, 1 in 5, has a diagnosable mental health problem. 1 in 5. 1 in 5 adults, too, by the way. Last year in the United States, over 48,000 people died by suicide. We lose 20 veterans a day in America to suicide. More police officers and first responders died by suicide last year and for many years before last year than died from every other cause in the line of duty combined. We don't talk about that much. Do you realize from 2007 to 2017, the rate of suicide for people ages 10 to 24, the wonder years of life, or at least they should be, the rate of suicide in that group increased 56%. And that, by the way, was before COVID. So something's happening, and we can either pretend it's not, or we can start to ask people how they're feeling, how they're doing, and mean it. I want to give you a couple of stories because I think stories sometimes are the best. I spoke one day at a prep school. If I gave the name of it, you would know it instantly. And any business that might be listening on this Zoom call would be happy to have a graduate of this school. Trust me when I tell you that. And they wanted to have these kids a mental health awareness day. Now, I'm a baby boomer, so times have changed. But when I was in high school, we would have wanted a day at the beach. That would have been a great day. Or maybe a week without tests or quizzes. That would have been very high on our list. Not these kids. I wanted to have mental health awareness. And so they asked me to come to their school, and I spoke to the entire student body. And when I finished speaking, the senior boy who introduced me asked this question of all of his classmates in this very exclusive school. If there's anyone in this auditorium, he said, who has a mental health problem, or someone you love has a mental health problem, would you please stand up? I'd never heard that question asked that publicly, and I thought, no one's going to stand up here, not here. Are you kidding me? No, nobody's going to stand up. After about 30 seconds, all but 25 of the hundreds and hundreds of kids were standing up. I thought it's hiding in plain sight. It's here. Anxiety and depression are epidemic among young people. Not their fault. I'm not blaming them. There are a lot of causes for it, some of them social and cultural, I think. But the bottom line is that mental health issues are common everywhere, every day. Most of them, the vast majority of them, can be successfully treated. The sooner you find them, the more evidence-based treatment you provide, the success rate is so much higher. It is not a hopeless cause, not the hopeless cause I was taught to believe when I was a kid. It's far from that. But not if we don't talk about it, not if we don't find it. And that private school story I told you, 6 months later, I shared that in a public high school auditorium on the seacoast of New Hampshire. I wasn't asking the kids in that public auditorium, I was just sharing what that boy asked his classmates. And when I told those students in that public high school what that boy had asked, they started standing up. Almost every kid was standing up. The principal said, I'm shocked by this. I said, I'm not shocked anymore. And so we don't have a mental health system in the United States, which is sad to me. It's unnecessary. It used to be that way for cancer, particularly breast cancer. It used to be that way for HIV, not now. It used to be that way for ALS, dementia. And we've come a distance on mental health, but we're a long way from where we need to be. We all know that. And I am convinced after 6.5 years of helping kids with what eyes who open to me, not because I'm special, but because I'm present and they know I won't judge them or shame them or blame them. That's a norm that we need. A lot of businesses have EAP programs, and I think that's wonderful, but the national statistics show you that the percentage of people who use those is relatively low. And part of it is cultural and social. People who will talk to you about their mental health will talk to you if it's safe to do it. A lot of people in the workplace don't think it's safe to talk about it because they think people will be whispering about them. They don't want to talk about their children because they don't want to look somehow imperfect. That's what's got to change. That's what needs to change. Last statistic I want to share with you, and I'll turn over the floor. I would like to say that I wish all of you had been with me at my elbow in those gyms and auditoriums. It would change your life, and it would open your eyes as it's opened mine. And I just never understood the problem like I do now. And I never thought treatment was possible. I know it's highly possible now once you get access. But here are some statistics that should trouble everyone here. And the reason businesses need to be proactive on this. In 2019, before COVID, the Center for Disease Control did a national survey. They do them every 2 years. It's anonymous. It goes to high school kids. They want your age, your sex, and your year in school. That's it. So it's very anonymous. 3 or 4 of the questions of the 80 or so they pose on the CDC survey relate to mental health. And I've run these questions by psychiatrists, and they tell me the questions are the right questions. First question I want to bring to your attention is this. Have you felt sad or hopeless for 2 consecutive weeks or longer in the last 12 months so that you haven't been able to engage in normal everyday activity? 2019, looking back to 2018, before COVID, 46.6% of high school girls answered that question, yes. That's a depression question. 26% of high school boys answered that question yes. In that same 2019 survey, 25% of high school girls said they had given serious consideration, that's the question, to ending their own lives in their previous 12 months. 15% they had made plans to do that. 11.3% of high school girls in that survey, 2019, looking back 1 year, 11.3% had attempted suicide one or more times. That number, by the way, in New Hampshire for that year was 8.3% had attempted suicide one or more times. I've had more kids in Jim's Armatorium who have told me they've been hospitalized with suicide attempts, lost friends and family members to suicide. But most of the people with a mental health problem will just never maximize their potential. And many people, by the way, to crush the old stereotypes, many people with mental health problems are very bright and very gifted and very talented and very decent. And so whatever the stereotypes are, they're almost always wrong. And so businesses that genuinely welcome them, to say it's okay not to be okay, it's just not okay to pretend you're okay, and we got your back, those businesses will flourish. The people who pretend that the culture of 1955 is still operative will not get young people, and they won't keep them when they come. So today's topic could not be more timely, and I really applaud the people who are doing this today and the speakers, and to all those of you who took the time to listen, because I think it's really important. Anyway, thank you.
Well, thank you, John. I think your understanding of this issue is so tremendously important. And I'm looking forward to now taking this from the young people coming up into our workforce. But now I'm happy to introduce a couple of people who are working on this currently in their workplaces. I'm very pleased to welcome Mike Moloney, who is the Senior Vice President of Corporate Development and Training Management at Kennebunk Savings. Mike has been in banking for 32 years and working for Kennebunk Savings for the last 25. He spends a considerable amount of his time developing and delivering training programs that have a direct impact on the mental health and well-being of his colleagues and the culture of the organization, helping them to effectively cope with stress, change, conflict, and communication. The bank also has a robust diversity, equity, and inclusion program, understanding that employees from diverse backgrounds can face lack of representation, microaggressions, unconscious bias, and other stressors that impact their mental health and psychological safety at work. So I'm really excited to have Mike share his thoughts with us today. Mike? Mike, you're muted.
Thank you. All right. So thank you, everybody. And I appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to you a little bit about what we're doing here at Kennebunk Savings to promote mental health and well-being in the workplace. So at Kennebunk Savings, we are committed to creating and maintaining an inclusive workplace by promoting awareness and understanding on a broad dimension of different mental health related topics. Our moral here at Kennebunk Savings, one of the first things that people see when they come through the door is helping one another is always the right thing to do. And that has to do with helping the customers that we serve in the community, helping nonprofit organizations in the community, but it also has to do with helping our colleagues that we work with. So there is a strong intersection between mental health and inclusion. One of the major focuses that we have from a mental health and wellness standpoint is diversity, equity, and inclusion education for all of our staff members. Mental health and diversity, equity, and inclusion are closely connected. Employees from diverse backgrounds can face lack of representation, microaggressions, unconscious bias, and other stressors that impact their mental health and psychological safety at work. And that is something that we work to overcome. So we established a diversity, equity, and inclusion council here at the bank. We have a leadership program at Kennebunk Savings. A lot of the people that are in the leadership program come from younger generations, and they place a tremendous emphasis on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So one of the projects that our Leadership Academy came up with is our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council, which we started about 5 years ago here at Kennebunk Savings. Well, as a result of our work with diversity, equity, and inclusion, we conduct ongoing diversity, equity, and inclusion training workshops with all of our staff members. All existing staff members that either were currently working at the bank or new hires that joined the bank attend a half-day workshop that we call Talking About Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. What I find when I run those sessions is many people come to those sessions having never talked about issues regarding to race, having never talked about issues with regard to gender identity with anyone in their lives, and they don't know how to have these conversations. So a big emphasis of our diversity, equity, and inclusion training is just teaching people how to talk to others about these types of topics, how to talk to people who might have a different perspective from you. So we call all of our diversity, equity, and inclusion trainings go under the heading of talking about, and then we focus on a different aspect of DE&I. We have annual follow-ups that we continue to keep a focus on. This particular year, in fact, this afternoon, I'm going to be doing the 20th workshop in our series talking about gender identity and gender expression. We'll have about 16 of our staff members come to that session this afternoon. And I assure you that every single person in there is going to learn something new that they weren't aware of before they came to the session. And they'll engage in conversations that they've never had the opportunity to do in their lives up to this point. We've established several different employee resource groups at the organization. And one of the resource groups that we have that's very well attended is our Pride employee resource groups. It's a way for people to get together in a safe place and talk with people who have common experiences with them and share their tips for how to be safe and be well in the workplace. So I want to share with you some of the feedback that we've got from our staff members with regard to these diversity, equity, and inclusion trainings that we've done. Obviously, for people who are from vulnerable or marginalized communities, these workshops are really impactful for them. This was sent to me after a session a couple of months ago. For many years, I was not comfortable in my own skin, not knowing where I belonged. Only recently have I become more comfortable with myself, which has helped me be more open about who I am. I'm a non-binary, gender fluid, non-conforming person. It is fantastic that more people are becoming aware of the tiny boxes that we as a society have put ourselves into. Kudos to the DE&I team. So obviously, when we do these trainings, we know that people who come from vulnerable and marginalized communities are going to see a direct impact, a direct positive impact from everybody in the workplace being educated about these things. But the other community I want to speak about are the people that do not necessarily come from marginalized or vulnerable communities. A lot of people that we work with are coming from mainstream groups, and they have not had much exposure or experience with these types of topics. And because of that, they don't know how to talk about these topics, and they don't know if it's right to talk about these topics. And as Judge Brennan said, you can't address these types of issues unless you're willing to talk about it. So here's some feedback that I'm going to share with you from a colleague who was a person who was uncomfortable about diversity, equity, and inclusion workshops. She said, I've always had mixed emotions about the DE&I sessions and tend to feel a little dread when the invites and notices go out. It's typically the norm for these topics not to be talked about in the workplace. And that is what I've become comfortable with. I think the class yesterday was well done. The session was informative. I learned new things, and I thought it was a very welcoming tone to the conversation that made me feel free to ask questions and share. So these sessions really make a difference for everybody in your organization. At the end of every session, we invite all of the participants to give their feedback to the organization. We have an email that's set up for feedback. It's called b.u@kennebunksavings.com. And those examples of feedback that I just shared with you are very typical of the types of feedback that we get from people through this avenue. Another program that I'd like to share with you that I'm very proud of here at Kennebunk Savings is a program that we call our GO program. It's short for the Great Opportunities Program. Domestic violence is a huge problem in our communities. An enormous number of women will experience domestic violence in their lifetime. Oftentimes they have to leave their homes, very often with just their children in their arms and the clothes that they're wearing, and that's it. We've partnered with several organizations to help primarily women, although it is not a gender-specific workshop. But we have partnered with a number of organizations. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men experience severe intimate partner violence. Intimate partner violence accounts for 15% of all violent crime. Women between the ages of 18 to 24 are most commonly abused by an intimate partner. Domestic victimization is correlated with a higher rate of depression and suicidal behavior. So because of that, Kennebunk Savings reached out and partnered with several domestic violence organizations like Caring Unlimited here in York County, Haven in New Hampshire. And we also partner with the Jobs for Maine Graduates program, which is a program for high school students in Maine. We partner with the program at the Sanford High School. And what we do is we proactively reach out to these organizations looking to recruit women who are in their programs to come and work with us here at Kennebunk Savings Bank. We go out there and we tell them we want them to be part of our team. Many of our recruits that we bring into the organization through this program have never worked in a professional setting before. And very often they would not consider working in this type of setting unless we went out and specifically asked them to come and work with us. When they come and work with us, participants are provided with an experienced mentor and resources to help them successfully adapt to working in this type of an environment. And then we think that it's not enough to just give somebody a job. You've got to give somebody the skills that they need to be able to be successful in that job. So all of the participants that come into the organization through the GO program are provided with free ongoing education. We have established a program called our Professional Banker Program. And over the course of the year, they take a series of classes and seminars that come to a total of about 60 hours to help them really build a solid foundation to be successful in banking. One final program that I'm going to mention to you that we use extensively here at Kennebunk Savings is the Myers-Briggs instrument. Myers-Briggs, as some of you may know, is a personality assessment. It was established by Carl Jung, based on the work of Carl Jung. And it helps people become a little bit more self-aware of why they choose to do things the way they do them. And I think more importantly, why other people tend to do things the way that they do them. Oftentimes misunderstandings happen at work when somebody does something and a lot of us think, why are they doing that to me? Or why are they saying things that way? Using Myers-Briggs, we found that that's a really useful communication device to help our coworkers understand what drives your own communication style and choices so they gain self-awareness. For us as an organization, it provides a common communication language when it comes to personality differences and the types of conflict that can arise. So it gives us a way that we can constructively talk about this with each other. It provides us all with a foundation on how to adapt our style to foster more effective working relationships with others. If you know that somebody you're working with has a different style than you, and you know how to communicate effectively and how to present information to that person in a way that's going to be more receptive, that's going to build the foundation for a better working relationship with that person. So we put a lot of emphasis on that. And the bottom line with this is it helps. Diversity is important. There's value in diversity, and using the Myers-Briggs instrument is a way for us to help using those differences constructively. So we provide our staff members with strategies that help with their communication style. We have workshops on how to handle change, workshops on how to handle stress, workshops on how to handle conflict, and workshops on how to be a better leader and how to interact effectively with your leader. Our ultimate goal here at Kennebunk Savings is that our entire community thrives. We want everybody that works here to be successful and happy in their job and to feel safe in their job. And our happily ever after as an organization is that our entire community thrives. So I'm going to stop with my presentation there, and I'm just going to throw it open and see if anybody has any questions about any of the programs that we do.
Well, and I do want to mention to everyone, if you have questions for any of the speakers, if you want to enter those in the Q&A or in the chat, if you want them to generally be seen. We welcome questions. So I know we were planning on some time at the end, but if anybody has immediate questions, I'll hold off and see if something pops up in Q&A. Otherwise, I'll continue on if that's all right with you, Mike.
Yes,
and we'll
absolutely.
go back to questions. All right. So I'm also excited to welcome Shawna DellaMonica, Vice President and Human Resources Manager at Kennebunk Savings. Shawna joined Kennebunk Savings in 2004 as a teller while still in college. I did the same thing. I love it. She found her calling when she transferred to the role of Human Resources Assistant and went on to pursue a degree in the field. Today, she oversees the department and is active member of the Society for Human Resources Management. She develops and builds on existing wellness programs to promote physical, mental, spiritual, and financial well-being of employees. She also helps drive wellness initiatives such as the bank's recovery-friendly workplace and a program which provides opportunities to survivors of domestic violence to find gainful employment and get back on their feet, as Mike has just described. So we're looking forward to hearing your perspective, Shawna. Thanks for joining us.
Great. Thank you very much, Michelle. And as most of you have heard from Mike, we do have a lot of different programs at Kennebunk Savings that we offer. And what I'm going to talk about is more on our benefits and wellness side of the arena. So let me just get this pulled up here and share my screen. So workplace wellness, as part of our overall goal with workplace wellness, we hope to provide a supportive work environment through education and offering organizational resources that help encourage our employees to have an overall sense of well-being and foster a culture of wellness here at the bank. We always try to explain why we do things here at the bank. So we were coming up with reasons on why we have workplace wellness here, and we came up with a few. One of them is to raise awareness of health risks amongst our population, to improve our overall well-being, achieve a better work-life balance. It helps employees to prepare for the future. We can help build better relationships with our coworkers, have the ability to do more of what we love, and also have fun, which is something that our CEO really talks about on a frequent basis. He wants to ensure that all of the employees are having fun here at KSB. So part of our wellness program, excuse me, our wellness program has three main components. We have substance use disorder support. We have a wellness committee with health coaching, and we have well-being enrichment activities. With substance use disorder, we actually have a substance-free workplace policy, and we actually are certified with the state of New Hampshire as being a recovery-friendly workplace. So what is a recovery-friendly workplace? It's a workplace that encourages a safe and healthy environment where our employees, employers, and our communities foster a supportive culture that encourages the success of those in recovery from substance use disorder. So how do we support our employees with being a recovery-friendly workplace? We support healthy lifestyle choices. We've actually developed policies and provided resources to make it easier for our employees to access support and recovery services. We actually have flyers throughout all of our locations within break rooms or in restrooms that actually have resource sheets and information regarding the various recovery avenues that they could reach out to or recovery programs. We also have strived, as Mike has talked about, to use language that's not stigmatizing or doesn't stereotype. We try to be very inclusive here at the bank. In terms of our wellness committee and health coaching, we actually have a dedicated wellness committee that has at least 10 members on it and focuses on wellness generally each month of the year. We have a dedicated health coach that we have contracted with, who is there for all of our employees on a full-time basis. She meets with the employees at least twice a year and is there to help talk through whatever they're going through or set goals with them. We offer various challenges and seminars throughout the year, whether it be through vendors that we work with or through other nonprofits that we have connections with. We also provide information regarding well-being in our employee monthly newsletter. We offer telehealth as a way to help reduce expenses for our employees. Our medical plan does offer telehealth services for a variety of things, such as things that you might go to urgent care for that are non-life threatening, and dermatology appointments. Also now there's more of mental health telehealth that is starting to roll out, and that includes psychiatry and therapy appointments. We also have an employee assistance program that is pretty robust, and we're pretty proud to offer to our employees, as well as offering financial wellness education by helping our employees support, think about things that have to do with either debt services or preparing for retirement, how to save for the future. And then in addition, we're working on creating some retirement education on how to prepare the workforce that will soon be going into retirement and what they need to think about. I wanted to focus in on our employee assistance program because this is one of the benefits that we have worked on over the past few years to really develop, and is really representative of what we do on an annual basis when our HR team is looking at our benefit offerings. Our employee assistance program is available to all of our employees and anyone that's part of their household. There are resources for emotional and well-being support, daily life assistance. There are online resources, as well as being able to call and talk with someone. There are legal and financial services as well, and our employees and their family members can call any time of the day. We used to have 3 sessions per event for employee, and over the last couple of years, we actually increased that to 8 sessions per event. So our employees now can reach out and talk with someone 8 times at no cost to them for assistance with things that they may need help with, whether it's caregiver support, having to prepare for, end of life, preparing and things like that. So what we've now done in 2023 is we have now added Talkspace virtual therapy sessions, which is a way to support mental health of our workforce. Our employees can now reach out to our employee assistance program and request to have up to 8 free virtual therapy sessions starting in 2023. So another thing that we're really doing to help with mental health in the workplace. The other item, the third area that we focus on, is well-being enrichment activities. And what we have listed here is just a handful of what we offer, but we do offer a self-defense class for women. We actually have fitness classes in our fitness center that's located in our operations center in Kennebunk. We do roll out or we offer AED and CPR training for our employees. And we also host wellness hikes for our employees throughout the year for them to join with their families or friends. And as you can see down there, maybe some pups might join as well. The other thing that we consider for the overall well-being of our employees is our time off. We have a very generous time off benefits package that includes vacation, sick, and earned paid leave, plus other categories as well. One thing, though, that we are really proud of offering to our employees is paid time to volunteer. The National Alliance for Mental Illness has stated that volunteering helps reduce stress, increase happiness, and develop confidence in a person, and also helps them to find a purpose, which can be so beneficial in the day and age of people dealing with the mental health issues that they are now. So as you can see, we are constantly thinking of ways that we can improve our offerings and our benefits to our employees and make changes to our benefit plan design, and consistently thinking about these things on an ongoing basis. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Shawna. We've got quite a few questions in the Q&A, so I'm going to jump to those and also share some that have been sent in the chat. So Zach asks, how do you determine the topics for DE&I lessons? I think that must be for you, Mike.
Yes. So obviously we're a bank. We're not experts in the field of diversity, equity, and inclusion ourselves. So we partner with a consulting group, Jermaine Moore from the Mars Hill Consulting Group, who specializes in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Jermaine comes in and provides ongoing training to our senior management team, our board, the members of our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council. So I participate in those sessions, and as I'm participating in those sessions, I'm listening to the things that Jermaine is talking to us about. I'm listening to our staff members talking about the areas where they are facing challenges in their life. And then I put those two things together and come up with a topic that we're going to focus on. So this year, I think a lot of people are seeing that there's a stark generational shift in the number of people who feel safe to tell others that they are a member of the transgender community. 1 in 77 people between the ages of 18 and 24 are transgender. So we're increasingly starting to see people come into the workforce and have customers at the bank who are members of that community. And a lot of our colleagues are unprepared to engage in those types of conversations, which leads to a not positive outcome for anybody that's involved in that interaction. So we're trying to be proactive there by identifying issues before they become an issue, and providing people with the knowledge and the foundational knowledge of how to engage successfully in those types of interactions. But using a consultant to help us come up with those topics is how we do it.
Great. Well, we've had Jermaine Moore work as an advisor to our workplace racial equity learning challenge, so I know he's a fantastic resource. There's another question from Danae, and again, I think it must be to you, Mike. Do you have any, or Shawna, do you have any templates for forming employee resource groups or any additional resources for businesses looking to build out those offerings?
I know we've done a lot of work on establishing the ground rules for that. I haven't personally been involved directly in that, but if you can give us the contact information for that person afterwards, I know there are some people here at the organization that have been working on that, and we can get that information to you.
Great. And then I'm seeing, let's see, this a comment and a question from Kelly. This is an incredible forward-thinking approach. What was your motivation, Mike? This wellness program is incredible. Who designed the program? Has this been adopted by other companies?
I would say this, it comes from several places, I think, but most importantly, from a business standpoint, it comes from the top. Our president, Brad Page, he's been the president of the organization since 2008. These topics are really important to him. He understands that, you know, talking about things like diversity, we have 350 employees, and every year I'll take all 350 of those employees out of the workplace for half a day for diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'll take them out of the workplace for half a day for Myers-Briggs training. So that's a lot of time and resources that you're giving up. So you can't do that without having the support of your senior management team. But as Judge Broderick said, this isn't a nice to have thing. This is a must have thing, and it's essential for our business success. Sometimes it's hard to draw a straight line from what we're doing with diversity, equity, inclusion, and the other things that we do to the bottom line. But to our board, to our senior management team, they see that there is a direct financial benefit to it. But it's also employee driven. The members of the various organizations, committees that we have within the organization, like, for example, our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council, that's not made up of members of our senior management team. It's made up of people from throughout the entire organization. And oftentimes the people who actively want to be part of that are the newest, youngest employees that are coming through the door, because this is personally important to them, and they won't work at a company that doesn't have these types of programs. So it's coming from a lot of different places within the organization. I think, honestly, the people that have the biggest challenges with it are people from my generation. I'm at the very back end of the baby boomer generation. I hit the last year of the baby boomer generation. And when I was a kid, these things were never talked about. And because of that, as a person, I never felt that I was equipped to engage in these types of conversations. So very often the toughest nuts to crack to get on board with these types of programs are the people from my age cohort. But the younger generations, they're ending it, and if you don't have it, they don't want to have anything to do with you.
So true. Judge Broderick, also another question. You do a lot of presenting to young people in high schools and private schools. Are you also presenting to parent groups? And how do you advise them on the programs that are available for them to take advantage of when there so often are not opportunities available right now?
Yes, the answer is yes, I do present to parent groups. It's hard to get parents to come out at night. Maybe you haven't noticed that, but it's really hard. And it's not because they don't love their children. It's just because they're overbooked and overscheduled too. And since, the line between work and home and school and home, all those lines have been blurred. So we're all living in a 24/7 world now. And so we have a time famine in America. No one has time. One of the reasons, Michelle, I couldn't have done it without Dartmouth Health. During COVID, I asked them at the height of COVID if I could write the last many years of my life down, whether I could create a book. And so they told me I should try to do that. I also learned it's easier to say you're going to write a book than to write a book. Just remember that. In any event, I started writing the book, and it was cathartic for me because of all the stories I heard, all the kids I hugged. I wanted parents to see it and hear it and read it. And so Dartmouth published the book, and it's out there. I don't make a dime from the book. Please know that. Dartmouth doesn't either. Any profit, it's like $3 a book, goes to a mental health awareness fund at DH. I want parents to know what I've seen and heard and hugged. I probably haven't talked to their kids, but I've talked to their kids. I understand this generation. I do understand them now. And parents need to engage it. And last thing I would say, Michelle, there are a lot of reasons for mental health problems, and I'm not a clinician, I don't pretend to be. But a lot of what I've seen and hugged, a lot of what's been confided to me is culturally and socially driven. What do I mean by that? These kids spend a third of their waking hours in a virtual world. Eyeball to eyeball contact, which is where social emotional growth comes from, is in dramatic short supply. Parents are working harder than ever, and so it's harder for them to be present to their children, not because they don't mean to be, but it's just hard. A lot of the society is stressing kids. Talk to kids. I encourage parents, by the way, to just say to their kids, how is it going? Are you under a lot of stress? They'll probably open up to you if they think they won't be disappointing you. The kids that I hug, Michelle, so many of them are afraid to fail, whatever that means. They're afraid to disappoint their parents. They're often paralyzed by decision. And a lot of these kids chronologically are 15, 16, or 17. Emotionally, they're years younger than that because they haven't been allowed to develop those skill sets that most of us develop, particularly those baby boomers who were allowed to roam free, so to speak. The old come home in the summertime when the street lights go on. Those days are over. And those days were very beneficial for a lot of young people. So these kids are dealing with stresses and expectations, I might say, that my generation didn't grow up with. And so I think it's really important that we take the time to listen to kids. And I can't emphasize that strongly enough. And I hope enough people would be interested in the book. I don't make a dime from it. It's called Back Roads and Highways. You're free to disregard every word of it, but I don't think you will, frankly. And it's not my wisdom. It's the wisdom of your children in that book. That's what I hope parents will do. And there are not enough resources. Public schools, my hat's off to them. They do as much as anybody for mental health. Community mental health centers are invaluable, but they're all under-resourced, under-financed, understaffed. And that's a choice, by the way, that all of us make. Because it doesn't have to be that way. Doesn't have to be that way. And so I encourage people to speak up and to become impatient. The last 6.5 years of travel and talks and hugs and confidences had made me so impatient for change. And we need to do it. And businesses, I mean, listening today to what Kennebunk is doing is really impressive. I mean that. It's very impressive. It's ahead of the curve and it's essential from a financial point of view and a retention point of view, but it's also the right thing to do. And your motto, is to help one another. And that's what you're doing. And my hat's off to you. It's very important.
Oh, I agree. Thank you for sharing that. I have a question here for Mike and Shawna. In addition to the non-stigmatizing language, what has been the most helpful in having employees engage with the well-being services and programs?
I'll take that one, Mike. Initially, I think morale has just spiked in some ways. Having employees engaged and feeling like they can be comfortable with who they are and can be themselves at work and have the ability to enjoy being at work while we're there a good portion of our time has really helped keep that morale up, has helped to retain our employees, has helped to attract employees, and has been a huge benefit for us. As we've talked, we have these various committees, and this year we most recently just went out and did a little bit of a recruiting for our committee changeovers and recruited for employees that wanted to join. And between the three committees, we had probably 40 plus applications of employees wanting to be involved in one of our three committees that they can take part in. So it was really nice to see.
And it's really nice too that the programs aren't just available to staff members, but they're available to the family members of staff members as well. I was raised in a family where if you had challenges, if you had feelings, you were taught to grab them, push them down inside as deep as you can, and keep them there until eventually you die. And that's how you dealt with mental health when I was a kid. So when my daughters are facing challenges with their mental health, I'm not equipped to know how to engage in that conversation with them. But through our employee assistance program, I'm able to get resources that can help them, qualified people that can help them. My younger daughter signed up for City Year, and she was assigned to work at school in Newark, New Jersey, right as the pandemic was starting. So she went away from home for the first time. She was living in Newark and she was locked into an apartment, interacting with the students on Zoom And she was down there for a year, and she struggled with her mental health. She had anxiety, she had depression, and I was able to get on the phone. I was able to hook her up with a therapist right down the street from where she lived. She was able to go to 8 sessions with that person, and then the health insurance kicked in and started covering the additional sessions. And at a time when each of us, and as a parent, when your child reaches out to you and they say they're in trouble, you want to run to the side and be with them and help them in any way that you can. But first of all, I wasn't the person that was best equipped to do that. And secondly, because of the pandemic, we couldn't travel between states. So I couldn't go to New Jersey and be there with her. So having that resource available to be able to get help for your family member in a time of need was fantastic. So a lot of these programs make it so that when we come to work, we're able to think about work and focus on work, because the other areas in your life, you have the support that you need to be able to address those things.
Hmm. John, I'm wondering, you've been doing this since before the pandemic and, obviously now after. What are you seeing, as Mike has shared, like the pandemic has taken its toll, on his daughter? I'm wondering, are you seeing that more generally across all the students you're talking to? John, I was asking that of you.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, it has definitely taken its toll. There's no question. I mean, there's a lot of grief and isolation and missed opportunities you cannot retrieve.
Mm.
You didn't go to your senior prom because they didn't have it. You can't go back. You didn't have a real graduation ceremony. You can't retrieve that. And a lot of young people lost people they loved during the pandemic, and you really couldn't grieve publicly or even with family members. I mean, it's been very hard on a lot of people. The only silver lining, Michelle, and believe me, it's hard to find one, when it comes to the pandemic, is that you now see people talking more frequently and openly about mental health in particular. You see more mainstream papers and publications talking about it. You see athletes like Simone Biles talking about it. And every time somebody who's been successful talks about their own circumstances, it breaks the stereotype and it makes it easier for the next person. So, when I go around and I mean it sincerely, no shame, no shame. My son always says, it's so true. He said, Dad, anyone with a mental health problem, I don't care what it is, I don't care how old they are, they all have 2 things in common. Number 1, they didn't ask for it. That's true. And number 2, they don't deserve it. That's true too. So why in the world do we stigmatize that? And it's getting better from the world. I'm towards the front end of the baby boomer age, Mike. You're towards the back end. So it didn't change much from what you've said. It needs to change a lot. And young people will change it. Institutions like yours are changing it every day. And it's so powerfully important. So anyway, we all got to keep working on it. We got to stop being ashamed of it. It's a health issue when it comes to mental health, not a character flaw or a defect. Those days are over, and young people don't listen to that, and they will not stay with you as a business if you have that attitude.
So true. A couple of super quick questions because we're coming right up on time. Shawna, how many paid days of volunteer time or hours do you have?
We provide everyone with 8 hours each year of paid volunteer time.
Awesome.
Yes.
And also want another question. I just want to get them all in if I can. This question is, our EAP is for household members 18 and over, wondering what ages are included in yours.
Our EAP is for anyone within the household. So if there was one of our employees that was a caregiver to one of their parents and that person was in the household, then that person would be eligible to call the EAP as well.
Awesome. And maybe this is something we can do in the follow-up, but people were asking about tools for utilizing the Myers-Briggs. Maybe that's something that you can share with us, Mike or Shawna, and we can send out in the final versions, or excuse me, the follow-up to the webinar itself. And this has been recorded, so I know that was a question early on. Just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of that so that you can follow up with that as well. I want to mention some of the programs that we have. Well, and please, I need to stop and say thank you very much to John, Mike, and Shawna. You've been wonderful to share all of the incredible experiences and resources that you have. We strongly recommend John's book. I am going to be getting it myself. I love the stories that you've been sharing. I think they're relevant regardless of the age of your children. So mine are in their 30s, so beyond the high school days, but your stories are so important. I also want to share that this program goes on through May. And so there are more elements to it. There are monthly webinars such as these where experts like John, Mike, and Shawna are joining us. There's also going to be a psychological safety first aid course offered again in May by the Richards Group. We had that fully registered in December. It took place last week. Very important in understanding how to identify employees that have issues, that we need to refer them to help. And then we also have Refilling the Well with Deb LeClaire, which is an opportunity weekly for people to join for a half-an-hour session around some of the stressors in our lives and how we can address them, both understanding tools and techniques, but understanding the science behind them. So thanks to our amazing partners like Kennebunk Savings and Dartmouth Health. Without you, we could not be offering these opportunities, and while they are very critical at the high school age, we heard over and over again from our workplaces that mental health programming was critical following the pandemic. So we truly thank all of you for really bringing this together, and thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Mike and Shawna.